For the first time in my life, I'm truly free to see the clear-cut forest for the poison sea, to see the waters occupy the shores of Jersey, and I feel alive.
All right, hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Good. We're back after a false start because we forgot to add in the music. Calfire Crackpots 12, forest fires, the face of climate change, the face that causes orange skies and people to bitch and moan about how we're all fucked.
Mm-hmm. Well, why don't you
Right.
tell us why don't you tell the viewers at home about the good news?
We have news. The news is that we have a Twitter now, at Calfire Crackpot. I only posted one thing on it, which was that we went to the Anti-Flag concert in Chicago
Yep, we
a few
did.
days ago. It was fun.
Yeah, good stuff.
They
You
did
got me
good.
hooked on them.
And then we're also on Apple Podcasts now, so whole back catalog's on there. We'll continue to upload to there, so you don't have to watch the slides. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, these slides are on YouTube.
Yep.
So, what's the deal with fire? Jerry Seinfeld's a little toasty this afternoon.
It's a very good question. Fire, it cleanses, but it also kills things. How can it do both?
Fire is... it's cool. It's humanity's most stupid invention.
Yeah. Well, that and black powder.
Black powder is humanity's coolest invention, but that also includes fire.
Yep.
Anyway. Forest fires. They're a force for good. So, you got this big crowded forest. You need a fire. And forest fires are meant to clear out an overgrown forest, but not destroy everything in it. So if you have a controlled burn, like we'll talk about this more later in the episode, but if you are clearing the forest naturally or by having controlled burns every once in a while, when a big forest fire does come around, how well you maintain the forest is the difference between total destruction of the land and a healthy forest. So you're clearing underbrush, your good carbon cycle. There's very few emissions of smoke when it's a low fire. All around good stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. The forest fires, like you said, they serve two main purposes: to clear out brush when there's too much of it, and to prevent that brush from causing a larger fire that's going to destroy larger trees that really should not be dying at a fast rate. It's the brush that you need to get rid of. And things have adapted accordingly. Acacia trees are known for requiring heat in order for their seeds to germinate.
So why does climate change ruin everything?
Climate change ruins everything, if you don't mind me taking this,
You can
because
go ahead.
it makes those temperature fluctuations more drastic. That's why we call it global warming instead of climate change. The opposite. We used to call it global warming, but that kind of made this perception that it's going to make everything hotter, which isn't necessarily true. It just makes hot things hotter and cold things colder. And that ends up coming along with forest fires because it makes these dry conditions and these really, really hot summers that end up creating those big forest fires that we really shouldn't be seeing more than once every few hundred years.
That's right. So you have a picture of a dead giant sequoia that in all likelihood is thousands of years old. Giant sequoias, really the only reason they die on their own is by falling over when they get too big.
Yeah,
And then there's the map of acres burned during fire season. Fire season is starting earlier and ending later, and even pushing into the winter, wet season, where you shouldn't have that. So fire season really is 9 months on, 3 months off, give or take.
yeah.
And this is kind of status of wildfires. So increased greenness, unburned to low, low, moderate, and high. Those are kind of your categories of wildfire. The increased greenness is literally like barely anything happened. fires are getting more severe, more intense, more frequent, and they're burning far more acres. This last fire season was one of the worst on record. It was something 4 or 5 million burned acres.
Yeah.
That was not
It's also
good.
it's worth mentioning that this serves as really good proof that climate change is a real thing that's happening. This isn't just, the sixth mass extinction. This isn't just a normal cycle that happens. Those sequoia trees haven't been dying before, but they are now. And the only thing that's changed is human involvement.
Right. So when a forest fire does happen, debilitating land clearing forest fire, it's going to look something like this. This is somewhere in Colorado, but you have destroyed ecosystem, and then, grasses from surrounding areas, their seeds start to blow in. But these high severity wildfires, they remove all forest vegetation. And what that does is it puts kind of a waxy substance on the forest floor, which is impermeable to water. And that causes a whack ton of runoff and really hard for this to turn into this, which is a new growth forest. So what usually needs to happen is you need to get in here and plant more trees yourself. You need to have volunteers come in and plant trees because you need to accelerate this process. Saying that forests regenerate themselves after forest fires so you don't need to do anything about it is like saying that the oceans and the earth naturally absorb carbon dioxide so you don't need to do anything about emissions. That's true if it were happening at a natural rate.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So you got some effects of forest fires. They're not that deadly because for the most part they're happening in areas no one lives. We'll get into some notable fires later in the episode. But as we were saying, once that waxy substance forms, you have a lot of runoff and mudslides because there's no more roots to hold in land. So, of course, Route 101 a lot of times in the early winter is closed along some major portions of it because a part of it just falls into the ocean. And, of course, losses in habitat decrease biodiversity by a lot. And if you look down here, this is all smoke. In the middle of the United States, pretty much all of it has a thin haze of smoke over it from wildfires. So
Yeah.
a lot of respiratory illnesses, a lot of sun blotting outages, and a lot of people mad at a state.
Yeah, runoff is California hate. Yeah, we're totally original for that, but runoff's a really big deal. I feel like people kind of underestimate how huge
Uh-oh.
runoff
Uh-oh.
is,
You're
because that's
spazzing out.
just
Your mic.
anytime something is where.
Hey, man, can you hear
Oh,
me?
am I better now? Oh my God.
Yeah, try saying something.
My internet is going unstable.
All
Am I
right.
okay now?
Yeah, sure, try again.
So runoff is underestimated by a lot of people because it's just kind of a thing that happens, sliding rocks run off into water supplies, but it becomes a huge deal over time. Fertilizer from farming in less arable areas where you have to fertilize more and in just kind of higher amounts because it keeps on getting washed away. That ends up going into the water and making your water table all fucky wucky.
There's a
But
reason why the second, third largest freshwater lake in California, in one of the driest parts of the state, can't be used for drinking water. It's because there's
yeah,
huge algae blooms in it caused by agriculture runoff.
what phosphorus does to a particular body of water.
So, some firefighting tactics. I'm gonna start with prison labor because that's the one I was thinking about more. So, California Department of Corrections and Cal Fire, they work together. So you have prison inmates doing the shit jobs in firefighting, which is trench digging, um, stuff like that. And at first glance, that kind of sounds like government overreach, like putting into servitude. Um, but if you kind of look a bit deeper, California makes it super easy for once their sentences are up to become like full-fledged professional firefighters because they already have the skills and training and the know-how. So yeah, it's a little sketchy, but it's a form of criminal rehabilitation that doesn't involve further imprisonment.
It gets the job done.
It does. Which is why 2020 was so bad, is because they suspended the program for the year because of COVID.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah. So your main tools of the trade is called containment, which is you're just knocking down a row of trees to stop the fire from advancing. But that's a problem because when big fires happen, embers can just jump up over and get carried miles and miles away and start what's called a complex fire, which is just a patch of small fires over a very large area that's very hard to contain. And then when they join up, it can be random, and that's when people die.
Yeah.
It's very bad.
Mhm.
Then you have the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life, which is the fire train.
The fire train?
The fire train.
The fire train. I've never seen one of those before.
Yeah, because we live in Chicago.
Well, I've seen pictures of planes and helicopters dumping water and
Yeah,
flame
dumping this
retardants over
like
stuff, but I've never seen a train.
cancerous substance over the entire land.
That looks like they're gonna figure out in 30 years that it's like
I
asbestos times 10.
I don't know what it's made of, and it probably isn't an insane cancer-causing thing. It just looks bad.
It looks like you're making it worse. I know you're not, but dumping big red clouds onto fire makes it look like you're just contributing.
Yes.
Although, is that a consumer airline plane they're using for?
They use retired airplanes.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. And then you got, a lot of rail routes go through some prominent fire zones. So, you got a train just filled with water. You can just spray on stuff. It's very nice. And then you have
Very nice.
basically just off-road fire trucks. Nothing too complicated, but for fire management, they're not really out to protect as much forest as possible. They're out to protect property and people's lives.
Yeah,
Because argue all you want about which one's more important, the forest can't vote you out of office.
pretty much. The forest also will not sue you handsomely for putting out. Well, I think I were a Californian homeowner and I saw planes of water and fire trucks just dousing the forests and leaving my house to burn, I'd be a little mad.
Yeah. And I should have probably mentioned this in a separate slide, but the main energy provider, P PGE, Pacific Gas and Electric, for most of Northern California, they start like every forest fire. So
Really?
during the late summer when it gets super windy, their power lines fall over and like start every forest fire.
Oh,
Yeah, they get sued like every year and they go into bankruptcy every 5. So
oof.
so now we're gonna talk about some notable fires. So this it used to be a neighborhood.
Wow.
It did used to be a neighborhood. And like
Hmm.
I squinted at this and it looked normal. But like maybe it's the early 90s like terrible like picture, but all of these houses are destroyed.
Yeah, it was like pretty much everything in that area is leveled.
Mhm. This is like just north of Oakland and the 1991 Oakland Hills fire. So yeah, apparently there was a huge fire and they put it out and then like no one died, no one's house got destroyed. And then like they left everything in place that night just in case it started up again. And that the next morning, a single ember like flew into a like a bush or something, and then it started something that killed 25 people and the total cost is about $2.56 billion in damages.
Wow.
So every house, this entire land had to be reconstructed, and 2,843 single-family homes were destroyed. If you are a fan of new development and multifamily zoning, you might have liked this.
Yeah.
And then the 2018 Camp Fire. This one is really bad. This killed
That was
86.
one of the worst in pretty much all of California's history.
It was the deadliest. It killed 86 people.
Wow.
The town of Paradise was completely destroyed. Nothing left. Absolutely nothing left. Like completely leveled. Houses looked like this and then like this. This is what it looked like from space. This was a really interesting visual.
Yeah, you've got those big trails of smoke just behind it.
Yeah, this is
Covering
the
everything.
tails of Lake Oroville just for scale in
Wow.
the south. Yeah, so it was pretty big. It was 50, it was only like 150,000 acres, which like is pretty piddling for a wildfire these days. But what mattered is that where it was, this was started by a PG&E power line.
Yeah. Seems like
Yes.
that's a continuing theme.
So this was the most interesting one. So this was last year when this photo of downtown San Francisco was in the middle of the day.
Oh yeah, the red skies from last year.
Yeah, so that was caused by the whole area pretty much being surrounded by three complex fires, so CZU, SCU, and LNU lightning complexes. And all of that smoke rose into the air, reflected by the sun, turned orange, came down. Air quality was terrible, and it spawned some of what is the most terrifying natural disasters in the world, a fire tornado.
Fire tornadoes are. How do you know what to say about them? They're
They're
fire
terrifying.
tornadoes.
Like it's a freaking fire tornado. All of these fires they killed no one, so that's nice. But
Yeah.
altogether, it was about 400,000 acres and 222 buildings destroyed. There's a reason why, unless it's a metropolitan area, much of the forested America is pretty deserted. Not many people live there. 'Cause if something does happen, it's pretty hard to get to you, and stuff like this can happen, and no one's saving your house. But
Yeah,
you
it's
can't
tough to
have a
deal with. Tough to deal with a house in rural California when there's fire tornadoes on your lawn.
yeah, but you can't have a wildfire where there's no wild.
Yeah.
Back together in cities. This is a satellite photo of the CZU lightning complex, or what's left of it. This is one of the starkest examples of a forest fire that you can see in like from a satellite, because like a lot of times it's pretty hard to see. A lot of fire zones are like super patchy. But this is pretty stark.
Yeah.
You could I don't even need to say anything. It's completely destroyed.
Yeah.
Couple more. The Dixie Fire. It looks like a freaking volcano erupted. But this was the 13th largest fire in in recorded history. Only one person died, and that was a firefighter.
Hmm.
But 963,000 acres were burned. They didn't even use acres anymore. They started using square miles, of which it was 1,500.
Wow.
Yes. That was
How big
huge.
is 1,500 square miles? That's larger than most countries.
1,500
Some
square.
countries.
1,500 square miles. I don't
Let's
know.
see.
San
I'm
Francisco
pulling
is like
this up
50.
right now.
So 20. It's a lot. It's a lot of land. And not all of it was totally destroyed. It's important to mention that not all land looks like how it did back here after a wildfire, but most of it did. And you had stuff like this, which is just the most terrifying thing I can imagine. Just an entire hillside coated with fire.
Wow. And that's over a land area that's large, that's larger than Hong Kong by about 5 times, or by
Ugh.
about 4 times. And then imagine half of Puerto Rico
Okay.
totally blanketed in flames like that.
Yeah, that's not good. Granted, it wasn't all at the same time. This fire did go on for about 4 months. July, August, September, October. Yeah, 4 months. So it was one marathon of a fire. And it was named after the creek near where it started. That's interesting. But it's,
Hmm.
yeah, it was, again, a little bit northwest of Lake Oroville. So the Paradise Fire, I'm sorry, Campfire would have been like right over here.
Yeah.
And then the one that had everyone talking, the Caldor Fire this year. This almost totally destroyed South Tahoe. Like, a lot of people don't appreciate how close it was to completely destroying South Tahoe.
Yeah.
South Tahoe is like a pretty populated city, and this is a one of the ski towns, like ski resorts in Tahoe, on fire. And this one's gonna be hard to see, but
It looks like
this was a live satellite photo taken probably about 2 hours ago. And this is Lake Tahoe. It's a little hard to see, but you see this kind of darkened area right here.
oh yeah.
Yeah, that's from this fire. So basically,
Wow. That got disturbingly close.
yeah. Um, no one died. That's good.
Yeah.
But
That's good.
it's burned about 200,000 acres. So 347 square miles. So how do you fix this? Um, you have a few options. Obviously, the best way is, you know, stop burning the oil and the coal and the things that make these forests do this. But the reason why these fires are so bad, and states like Texas or Wyoming are places that theoretically should be just as at risk for really bad fires, don't get them as often. A lot of that has to do with proper forest management. So it pains me to say this, but when people were asking Trump, what are you going to do about all the wildfires and everything last year? He said, well, it's the forest, it's like they didn't take good care of their forest. Now this is what's happening. And he's half right. He's
Ye-
ignoring the elephant in the room, obviously, but
Yeah.
stuff like this, forests that look like this, that are insanely cluttered, are freaking time bombs. Um, if you have a forest that's super crowded like this, it's really easy for fires to get to the crown of a tree and completely destroy them. Which is why you need to
Yeah.
have controlled burns like this, which are targeting the underbrush and are under the watchful eye of a firefighter to put them out if they get too hot, to stop stuff like this from happening.
Yeah. I'm not saying Trump wasn't forcing the blame or anything, because he absolutely was.
Mm.
But yeah, you kind of have to prevent it from getting to crown fires, because that's the point where you really just have to sequester that piece of land and hope embers don't toss over
Yes,
the line.
and they will.
Yep.
So, California has kind of realized this in the last couple decades and has tried to pick things up, but that doesn't really make up for almost a century of lackluster forest management. But hopefully, as time goes on, climate change under control a bit, these fires do get less severe, because they're a big problem. And beyond just, losing valuable forest and biodiversity, um, it's very hard to capture the total amount of human death and destruction caused by premature death or respiratory illness or property loss, stuff like that.
Yeah. It's like that rainforest loss is so profound, because there are entire ecosystems that have just been lost to,
Hmm.
fire and habitat loss that we will never know about.
And I could have very easily made this like an 8 hour long podcast about every single forest fire, like every insane season all over the world. But this is not just happening in the West Coast. This is happening everywhere in the world. You know, Eastern Europe had a lot going on this summer. Siberia has a lot going on every summer. China, interestingly enough, has a lot going on during the summer. Wildfires happen, and in the Amazon rainforest, they had a lot going on. That was a couple years ago. But for whatever reason, a bunch of fires started at like the exact same time, and just a mega rainforest fire, which shouldn't really be happening.
Yeah. That's kind of the whole summarization of this episode. These things really shouldn't be happening.
That's right. But let's take a look. Let's come back to Chirac, and we're going to talk about the Great Lakes, or at least part of them, with the first episode about the Great Lakes being on how they make farming in the Midwest possible, because they do.
Yep, taking a field trip to the Chirac conflict zone.
We are. Don't stay out at night.
Don't stay out a day.
Just don't go there.
Yeah, just keep a good 50-mile circle around Chicago, Gary, Indiana, and the West Bend, and you'll be fine.
Yes, that's right. Just don't go anywhere near there. All right. Shout outs before we go.
Let's see, shout outs. Shout out to the proud incarcerated men and women that have been helping the California Fire Program.
Now I feel stupid because my shout out was going to go to the Ghirardelli chocolate squares that I received as a gift that I've been eating all day.
As a gift?
That was as a gift. It was like a birthday present that got lost in the mail. My birthday was like 4 months ago.
Oh. I mean, that's good stuff. Just getting chocolates in the mail unexpectedly.
They were a little stale, but it's fine.
This is on your back. The point of contention is how they act. Where you draw the line will set you free. The debate is over. The debate is over. The debate is